My name's person for this ad hoc meeting. Tonight's meeting is on the amendment to the Peddler's Ordinance, Section 11, 4-6, Rogers Park concessions. It is now 6:40, and we are meeting in the caucus room, 3rd floor, City Hall. Once again, my name is Colleen Stanley. I'm the chairperson. I have with me tonight Mike Callis, Councilman Mike Callis, Councilman Fred Visconti. We have with us Corporation Counsel Les Pinter, and also Director of Parks and Rec, Nick Kaplanis. We also will be having, I think shortly, Antonio Ayatarola, Director of Public Works. So I think what we can do is possibly start off with a request made by our Parks and Rec Director, Nick Kaplanis. Maybe he can start us off and tell us what he wants to accomplish.
Okay, the plan here is to eliminate motorized vehicles from Rogers Park. There are numerous vehicles that are parked there or go through there during the course of the week and the weekend, evenings and weekends. There are a number of vehicles that pretty much stake out a piece of the park and claim it as their own. We have had issues with other vendors that also have vendor licenses come into the park and park near one of these vendors that are down there for the majority of the time. There have been some conflicts with them, territorial conflicts. In addition, when these trucks are on the move or go through the park, they many times will double park, block cars, parking places where people have to cross the street in order to access their whatever they're vending, which is an issue with safety and the health of those people that are going back and forth across the street. Do you want me to continue as far as the rest of what we have proposed as far as the elimination of the...
What were your ideas? I mean...
Well, we had talked about the possibility of eliminating motorized vehicles altogether and setting up fixed structures in various areas of the park. Obviously, there's an expense associated with the structure and also the ability to bring water, sewer, and power to any of these specified locations. So we identified several places that it would be possible to put a building. And as far as who would put the cost of putting up such a structure is in question. There's several possible ideas that have been discussed. One is the city doing it, another is having someone actually erect the building themselves that would be interested in housing a concession type business.
And how would that work? Maybe Antonio can...
Well, I don't know anything.
The putting up of a building in some of the locations we had talked about, accessing water, sewer.
Yeah, we actually have 2 areas that would have pretty decent access to water and sewer. We just provided an additional area of opportunity next to the fields that we just constructed, which was not there before. The Veterans Hall used to be on a septic system. We actually brought a lateral to that, and then we put a spur in to possibly do some type of a concession area in that, just to the left of the building, if you're standing in the parking lot, to the left of the building. So there is opportunity for sewer and water.
And you said 2 areas. Where's the other one?
The other area is right where the controls are for the sprayscape, which is basically that little hut directly behind the playground. Looks like somewhat of a shed. There's sanitary sewer and water over there.
Mr. Kaplanis just said that there would be a couple of different ways of putting a fixed concession stand. One, that the city pay for it themselves. 2, having somebody else build it. I don't understand how that would work. How you'd have, I mean, I know how Rogers Park, the baseball,
Yeah,
they did it. I mean, they came into the city and applied for all the permits.
Yeah.
They raised money, they built it, and they run it. It also,
Yep.
all the proceeds go back into Rogers Park and take care of the fields and what have you, and they did a phenomenal job, and once it was built, they donated it back to the city.
yep.
Is that what we would consider, getting some nice, good person that would just have enough money to, because it is pretty pricey. I looked
Yeah.
at some of the costs at the
Yeah, even
concession stands.
prefabs are very
Well,
costly.
I just got some stuff from planning, or from Sean Harity for some, the storage concession stand for Planisfield. I mean, I only had the estimated value, was $150,000. And then the
That's a little more than
DHS,
just a,
the DHS, yeah, I know, well,
Yeah.
it's storage, concessions, bleachers, and scoreboard. Now, mind you, we have another one here for Danbury High School, and it was a DHS concession stand and toilets, which, you know, we wouldn't ask somebody to put in toilets.
Right.
But the number here, estimated value at $428,600. These are huge numbers to try and get somebody to come in and bid on something that's seasonal. So that's what, I just wanted to know what your ideas were,
You know, with,
because I have a suggestion, but go
yeah,
ahead.
with the Danbury Youth Baseball, I mean, that's a viable entity that has plenty of people to operate it during their seasons. The money that they raise goes back into the program,
Right,
and, you know, it was an investment that they made for their own organization that has paid off for them. Any of the other locations that we could possibly identify down at the park doesn't have such a,
well, we have the Industrial League
Well,
softball, I
true.
mean, that's a huge organization.
it is, and there's.
It's not
a lot
any
of-
different
a
than
lot of-
what Danbury
yeah,
baseball is.
Right, but I don't know anything about their financing,
Mm.
nor their willingness to even want to get involved with something like that. I mean, of course, we
Right.
can approach them for that, but I take that a little differently because it's a bunch of people that go and play a game and then they're out and the next group comes in and they're out. I mean, a few people come in and watch the game. It's not like on the baseball side.
Okay.
So, you know, I don't know that they have the same type of interest in putting that type of time, effort, and energy into, you know, having that type of an establishment in order to raise funds for their leagues.
I'm gonna try to answer the question that you had. What I would envision, and what's been done in other communities, is you actually put an RFP together and you bring in a couple companies that are in the business of running a concession stand. And you do, you know, the contracts can be written in such a way where you would have a scope of what will be built and a commitment to that vendor for having the opportunity to run it and keep the proceeds from running it with maybe some kickbacks to the city on a shared profit, but that's how it would work. That's what some other communities have done. And, you know, they would have to do an economic study on whether or not they think that that investment over the period of a year that we're gonna lease it to them would actually pay off the investment. But that's really the venue of how we would get to have somebody come in and not use city funds, or maybe we would provide some, you know, like a sewer and water connection, but they would do the actual building. And a building's needs and the cost directly associated with the building is all determined based on what they're gonna do in that concession stand. As you start getting into cooking more and more a variety of food, the price goes higher and higher and higher.
You need vented hoods.
Exactly, and you need
Systems.
insole systems and things like that, but
Sinks.
some of the concessions based on selling ice cream or a prepackaged product, where maybe you're just doing some heat lamps, that's a very simple, very easy to build type of a facility. And they come prepackaged. What you described these are multi-square foot buildings that have full-blown kitchens, 3 freezers, refrigerators,
Oh, let me, the concession stand at Danbury High School has a full kitchen?
has a pretty intricate system.
It has a heating oven, I believe a regular
I think it
oven.
even has an oven.
Do they do the cooking there? I mean, I know like for, when it came time for football, you know, when they ran the concession stands, they used to ask the parents to bring food or, donate, that's how they did it. And, I mean, that's really not allowed. I mean, in a restaurant, you can't make food at home and bring it to the restaurant. It has to be done on premises.
Every one
So
of
we
these
really have to-
concessions has a license by the health department to do specific things. If they're doing something above and beyond that, then, obviously they're in violation of their license.
They have to be a certified food handler.
Yeah, you have to have a certified food handler that
If you are
supervises their
preparing food.
activities. But just based on that number that you gave me, man, I could build you a restaurant for $450,000.
There you go.
Pretty close to it.
Not a nice one. Okay, well, anyway, that's just something I got from Sean Heritage. And then, does anybody have any questions?
If I may, through the chair,
Mr.
to
Yes.
Corporation Council, in putting up an enclosed standalone concession stand, where you're selling food, obviously, what else? What is the state statute on whether you would have to or not have to have bathroom facilities?
It's probably the health department would that best answer that question. It's a park. I'm not sure about that. We'd have to get the health department to weigh in on that one.
I'm not sure either. I would think that if it's a restaurant where people come inside the building, then I think you need to have facilities. But for something, over the counter, I don't know that it's an obligation for
Yeah,
them.
I
Because the
think-
concession stand that is already there, they do have a bathroom, but right now, they just have porta potties throughout.
Yeah.
Is there
Right.
even a,
I don't think I
we
have
talked
to kind
about doing
of
it.
side with Nick. I don't think there's, and I wouldn't know, the health department would know. I don't think there's a requirement for bathroom facilities if you are just,
Handling
have a
food.
concession where you're not sitting people down, you're not providing an opportunity for them to sit down within your facility. But we can check on that real quick. It's a quick phone call to the health department.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, through the chair to Nick or Antonio. Now, I understand we're proposed on the spray park side, but where would that one be on the other side of the road? Or I'm assuming on the other side, right?
Well, we
Somewhere.
talked about the possibility of locating one down at the far end by the new turf field. I mean,
Oh, all the way down,
Yeah.
right? All the way
the-
down.
and I mean, from a facilities standpoint, as far as sewer, water, electricity, it's pretty accessible
Mhm.
as far as, accessing that type of, what you need in order to have a building there. And as I think about that, I mean, as nice a complex as it is, and as much as it's utilized, there isn't as much usage that far down into the park as there is
Right.
over by the playground or by the softball fields.
Right, or,
On that side. of the
yeah,
building.
and that's, yeah. Okay.
I just have one question too. After doing some investigation on for this ordinance, I was told, and I'm not sure who told me, if it was the town clerk or if he even was the mayor, that we don't even allow, or we're not supposed to even have vendors on city property at all. But we do, because obviously there's a need for services. And I think that the services that we have right now down at Rogers Park are a needed service, and they're enjoyed by a lot of people, but it's just gotten out of hand. So what I feel that, during this meeting, we need to kind of grasp hold of what's going on down there, because obviously, like you said, there's issues with fighting over spots and garbage and safety issues. But when we talk about motorized vehicles, we're talking about ice cream men, and I just can't see a safety issue of an ice cream man not allowing them in our parks. I think that's going a bit too far. I had some suggestions I also, after reading through the full ordinance and listening to Mr. Adirola, and then talking about the buildings, I thought that the concept of a concession stand is something that should be considered, but I don't think at this time that it should be a cost that the taxpayer should incur during this economy. I think that it would be a great idea to establish a Rogers Park zone and designated areas for vending, but I don't think, and this is just my opinion, and we're here to talk about it, I thought that maybe we could limit the vendors that are in Rogers Park, which would maybe help with the safety issues, and maybe areas that could be designated, like Mr. Kaplana said, maybe 3 areas, maybe one near the softball field, one near the, and I'm talking motorized. And they don't have to be motorized, being that they're gonna be driving around, but 3, maybe 4, we can decide on that. Mobile units.
Right.
Maybe one near the softball fields, between fields 2 and 3, one near the playscape, one near the new field that we have. That's something that I thought about, and then I also thought that we could possibly maybe have something, doing that, do something like we do with the Candlewood Lake Park and have it go out to bid. Have these 3 or 4 designated areas, have them each numbered, and have people bid on them, go through a bidding process through the purchasing department, and get as much money as we can, because you know what, it is a park, and it's like we have customers there for people, and we should we're providing a service. We have our parks department that cleans, and our public guys that are out there doing the fields and everything, so I think that the city should be compensated for the property. Now, that's just something to maybe go off of. Do I have any more ideas or suggestions? I think that it's a good idea to start with right now.
Yeah, we need to get a little better control on
Right.
what's happening down there. Nick, did you tell him about some of the fist fights that?
I just said that there were some confrontations.
There's things going on down there
Right.
that, are some concerns to us. Our biggest safety issue, and I don't want you guys to think that there is no safety issue, but when a vendor pulls into a spot and you have kids that are running from everywhere to try to get to that vendor's truck, creates a real issue. And it happens. I'm talking about kids running across the street, across parking lots, across travelways in a parking lot. The other big problem that we have is there seems to be a real hot spot on either side of the parking lot, which is between, what field is it, in the sprayscape?
Yeah, Lions Way.
So what ends up happening is he blocks the availability to see what left or right when you're pulling out of there, because the truck's there. So now that driver keeps pulling out to a point where his nose is into actually oncoming traffic. So we want to eliminate a lot of those issues. And maybe the first step is we try doing something with having dedicated areas with a dedicated person serving that. Now, if we have an issue with his
In a
performance,
dedicated spot.
his garbage is another major issue, then we could try to do something a little more aggressive, but,
But if we were to give designated areas,
Yes.
designated spots, with designated people, they would be,
it eliminate.
they would have to take care of the garbage too.
Right, it would
Well,
eliminate.
they would have certain responsibilities in order to keep.
Yeah, at least
That-
that
that
area.
spot.
The people down at Rogers Park, they keep it clean. But they have a lot of volunteers. The softball fields don't have as many volunteers. They have just a few people running that organization. They do a great job doing what they do. And there are people that are all over there with their garbage, so you can't expect the few designated areas for the vending to clean up their entire park. They need to chip in and help also.
To expand a little bit on that, I actually went down there the other day with my son on Memorial Day to see exactly what was going on. Now, we're down there quite a bit because my son's involved with baseball, but we never make it down, a little bit lower. So right across from the Rose Garden, it happened to be Memorial Day. There's a couple of vendors there, so I said, Michael, why don't we go get something to eat, see what it's all about. And actually, both of the vendors that were there did have a Danbury address, and that's what I actually was going to suggest, that if we move forward with this and let vendors there, maybe there can be a preference to city taxpayers to have a preference, you know, for a spot down there in a designated area. And, you know, what I saw when I was down there, and obviously it was just, you know, may not have been the busiest day because it was Memorial Day. It was clean. They did have a garbage can out. You know, they had a couple of picnic tables out for people to sit on. But I have seen the congestion that you're talking about down there. Now, the only thing that, you know, if you make an attraction across the road, and like I say, I'm up on the north side of the property more because of the baseball. And I understand what you're saying about, you know, the safety concerns with kids running out, and believe me, that's one of my greatest fears. And you know, when you're on the baseball field and you hear cars screeching to a halt, and you never know what the hell it is, you know, if it's a ball running out in the road, or you know, what's going on. It's definitely a concern. But from what I've seen with the ice cream truck, you know, it's normally, I mean, when I was at practice the other day, the kids spotted the ice cream truck on, you know, from the field, and I said, all right, guys, I said, you do this drill, you know, right the first time, I'll buy you ice cream. Ice cream truck pulls over, you know, right in the parking lot, and that's normally what happens. He normally has his route, you know, and the kids know. He's gonna get to you, you know, he's gonna come over this side, he'll be over the softball side, and, you know, he kind of makes his rounds. But these other vendors, I don't see the big attraction to the kids running, you know, across the street, because Danbury Youth Baseball does have the blockhouse there. There is enough of a, you know, variety besides ice cream, and I think that's one of the toughest things that we're gonna face with this, is that I just don't think that we can deprive, you know, any young kid of seeing the ice cream truck come along. You know what I mean? It's just, I mean, I think everybody here has childhood memories of the ice cream truck.
When you say motorized, yeah, motorized vehicle, they're part of it.
The only thing I would say to that is that maybe within the permitting of an ice cream truck, there has to be some type of rules as far as where, you know, you can't double park on the street, or maybe there's a way to restrict where he can stop. I mean, obviously, you pull into the parking lot where field one is,
Right.
fine, it's off the road.
Right.
In the softball area, pull in inside of there, you're off the road. You go down to the far end by Veterans, there's a parking lot there, you pull in there. Down by the playground,
There's no way.
you know, in the, you know, the
They usually park right by the fence.
Park and Rec parking lot. You know, but then people would be across the street from the playground, or maybe he's on, you know, right over by field 2 in the softball field. I mean, you know, I think you could maybe designate, you know, hey, these are the spots that you can go. I mean, they go around back of Mountainville and Rogers Park side.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So that's just, you know, that would limit at least, because the fact, I think with the ice cream trucks, I mean, they buzz through Rogers Park once or twice an evening, or, you know, maybe 3 or 4 times over the course of the weekend, but then they have a route where they go around to a lot of the residents, you know, the residential areas, and go through neighborhoods and sell as well. So, you know, going into the park area maybe requires just some more specific rules, which I don't know, I don't believe there's any restrictions that we put on anyone that has a vendor license at this point.
But isn't there a restriction? I mean, we're not supposed to have any vendors on any city property, period. I'm not saying that we're not allowing
My
it.
knowledge has never been enforced.
It's never been enforced, but it's on the book, so it's something that's not been enforced. I mean, we could very easily solve this by just following what's already on the books, but I don't want to do that, because obviously there's a need, and people enjoy seeing it down there. They enjoy going to the blockhouse, they enjoy grabbing a hot dog, watching a softball game, so I don't think we have to go that far. That's why I said, you know.
Kathleen, can you recite where that restriction is? Because I'd like
That's
to
just
know.
that's just what I think the mayor told me, that we don't have, that we don't allow it. We had an issue over at Hatters Park with, that was city property, and, you know, they had issues with the girls softball field, and then we had the guy with the bowling.
Yeah, it came up with the Candlewood Park concession because in the park, we had a fixed contract as we
That's
went
another
out.
thing.
That's what it
And
was.
so that the vendor who came across the fence, stopped his vehicle there was an argument about that. I'm not aware of any specific, if you take out a peddler's ordinance, I'm not aware of a restriction that doesn't allow a peddler to go on Rogers Park property is subject to reasonable regulation by Nick and his people. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. I just was curious about, to make sure I knew
I'm
that.
not really sure where, I can get that
Yeah.
information, but.
I mean, they exist, I know the Peddler ordinance pretty well, and I'm pretty sure there's nothing in there that.
Says you cannot be on city
restricts that.
property, you just have to get
It
permission.
doesn't say yes or no, it just says if you want an ordinance to vend in the city, here's what you gotta do. It doesn't say public, private, whatever like that.
Right.
I think we can restrict it if we wanted to.
I did talk with Scott Leroy from the health department about it, and, you know, there's a lot of issues that I have with vending, hot dog vendors, their carts or what have you. I didn't realize it, but when they come in for a permit, they come in, they apply for the license, and they have one inspection, and that's it. Opposed to the restaurants who have 4 inspections, a minimum of 4, up to maybe 8 per year. And, you know, they're always watched by the health department, so when I talk about safety issues, I talk about, those are my safety issues when it comes to the food that, you know, they're supplying or what have you. But I mean, I do have a copy of the vending and peddler's license that they have them fill out, and there is an area on here that says location where you are vending. So you know, it's just something,
Colleen?
yeah.
I'm sorry,
go
Joe
ahead.
was-
I know Joe had his hand up.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to give some additional focus to what Nick has started out saying, that we were asked, the top-down picture is that there's a Rogers Park property, right? It's like if you will, a square. And the idea was to present for your consideration a restructuring of that such that you address 2 concerns. One is the helter-skelter nature of the vending, you know, guys coming in, there's expectations, they can park in one area and for years, and there's fights and whatever. That's number one. Number 2 is the safety concerns that would be addressed by wheeled vehicles going down the road, you know, in and out, whatever. Those are the 2 issues. So the concept was to close off the square, if you will, create a zone that would prohibit and regulate both those things completely. So that was the idea. The second part of that idea would be to, in order to obtain revenue for the city, to create 1 or 2 or more fixed locations where the city can make a deal with somebody to sell whatever, and then the city would get an annual fee for that, plus maybe some revenue stream or whatever we work out. So those were the components of that, and the ordinance that you have before you is 11-5 is a brand new ordinance that would create that zone for that purpose. So that's a really quick summary of what the idea was. And as far as doing something short of that, that's your call. Nick did a good job presenting the business plan, which is, you know, to find locations, figure out what it would cost, and if it's, you know, we have the ability to put a facility in there, then go out to the market and obtain bids and quotes for companies that would do that under arrangements that we would talk to them about. So that's kind of the top-down look to solve a couple or 3 problems at the park now.
And
Does that?
in going along with that, the actual, you know, building of the site, putting something up is probably the biggest obstacle that we face from the standpoint of the city for, you know, finding the resources in order to do it, or, as Antonio stated, was to possibly find someone that would be interested in coming in and either erecting a structure or taking an existing structure and modifying it in order to be able to accommodate, you know, vending.
Or what about having a motorized vehicle drive in and be stationary?
In, you know,
Some of them are
in
self-contained.
other discussions, and, you know, Colleen and I spoke, the opinion that I kind of was able to come up with based on just some discussions that we had was the financing of something like this at this time was probably not practical. So in other discussions that we had, we talked about, all right, well, maybe assigning various sections within the park where someone could park and that would be theirs and no one else in the park, or no one else would be allowed into the park, because we had these designated areas. It was bid out, they had the high bid, and that spot is theirs from, April through October, which is basically the season that we're talking about. I mean, that's really something beyond what was initially discussed, in light of the fact that as much as we'd like to be able to see these structures put up at the park, we're not sure at this time that is going to be a practical thing. We're finding someone to come in and actually do it for us.
Right. And I think what you're talking about doing would probably deal with a lot of the issues that we're seeing down there.
Might be something to try at
Yeah.
first, and who
But
knows?
if you do that, you still have the problem with the wheeled vehicles on the roads. Even if you designate those guys in there, you can't stop, unless you do it by law, you cannot stop other vendors from rolling down the streets and
Yeah.
taking additional business. That's
But we're gonna
why,
create the Rogers Park zone.
if you do that, but it sounds like if you stop short of that and just have selected wheeled vendors chosen by bid to work, you're not dealing with the roads. You'd have to kind of adopt
Right.
it's almost like a package deal in a way.
Yeah, nobody
You
would
know what I
bid
mean?
on it.
No, I
Because
If you know
understand.
some guy's gonna come
No,
down.
absolutely, I'm
Yeah,
not
so
thinking
that's
that way.
critical. That would be critical.
I'm talking about keeping the Rogers Park zone.
Right, right.
Having 3 or
Fixed
4 fixed
locations.
locations that go out to bid. My only issue is the ice cream man. The ice cream man's gotta be able to go in, but when I
No.
talked to the permit center, they said as long as he was moving, they didn't care. Mr. Cabo?
Mrs. Stanley, thank you. Mr. Pinter, I heard you talk about the charge of the committee was to try to regulate the activity in the park versus prohibit it, and I'm totally for that. And I think that your idea of having...
Sorry.
It's okay.
Stop by the tape.
I think Mrs. Stanley's idea of having a 3 or 4 spot designation for food service and have those areas designated out and say, this is where you park, this is your garbage cans, you're responsible for these 2 garbage cans, the city will take care of, the Parks Department will take care of the rest of those garbage cans. But in the same light, you certainly could bid out the ice cream service to the park as well. And let an ice cream vendor bid on who's gonna be there and give them a designated parking spot behind each of these food service vendors in the 3 areas and let them roll. If they wanna roll through there, let them roll through there. But they have to pull over and park in those designated areas for the safety of the kids and the public that are there. So you could do both, bid out food service portion and ice cream service portion of it and let somebody see if they wanna take it. You may have a food service vendor that says, look, I'll do food service at spot A and I'll do the ice cream as well.
Well, I even said that. I said, there 3 designated areas, and you would bid for the designated area that you want to bid for.
Right.
Because somebody may not be interested over at the soccer
Right.
fields.
So
They
an ice
may
cream
be
truck
more
may not wanna
interested
park
in the
in one
softball
spot.
fields.
Right. An ice cream truck may
Because
not
of what
park
they
in one
sell.
spot all day. But he certainly can have he certainly can have the bid in the park.
Yeah, he can have the bid for the
And he can
entire
move within the
park,
park.
in designated areas.
Right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Kaplanis, if all the things that we're looking at, whether it's gonna be a standalone or motorized or whatever, what is going on now with where the Westerners are?
Yeah.
Because they have a hard enough time drawing people with food.
The Westerners had several different things that they tried over the last couple of years. Last year, towards the middle of the season, they actually hired a caterer. And he comes in, he's a food handler, he comes in and I'm not sure what kind of goods they're selling, but he goes in and prepares it, the Westerners get a portion of whatever he makes each
Hamburgers
day.
and hot dogs.
Okay, so it's hamburger. So he brings in a gas grill, prepares the food, sells, drinks, whatever, and the Westerners get a piece of that. And that's for 22, 24 home games that they have.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Now, prior to that, they had an arrangement with one of the vendors, a truck that used to park there, and I don't know what the financial arrangement was, but they would come in and do their games as well, but they did away with that. And I spoke with him this afternoon, he did feel that so far, this arrangement has worked out quite well with him.
Follow, they do have special nights. I know one night I think it's the fire department, police department, and they come in and they have hot dogs and hamburgers. Plus, if this other gentleman, or whoever it may be, comes in and he's doing his thing, you know, that they get a portion of that money from, how do we include that in whatever else we're looking to do? Or is that gonna be a separate issue?
An exemption. It's now Rogers Park, the blockhouse would be
It's gonna
exempt.
be grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Pre-existing.
don't know if we could do something like an
See,
exemption
they're
for
off-
people who
They're
are,
off the road, you know, not in the parking lots. I mean, they're.
they're in the parking lot
down-
sometimes.
Well, no, the way he's got it set up,
But what
now,
they
they're down the
did-
third baseline, you know, in
Right,
between.
They did away with that truck up there, I
Right.
guess.
Yeah,
what
the
you're
truck
saying
is gone.
Right.
The truck is
Right.
gone, yeah.
What I'm thinking is that if it's maybe an exemption to, I'm just an exemption if you are there for an organization. Like Rogers Park, all their proceeds go directly to
Right.
helping take care of the fields. But I don't, and I know that the proceeds from the catering, all the proceeds don't go back into the Westerners field.
Well, it goes into
A
their
portion of it.
organization and, you know, for
Just a
whatever.
portion of it.
Yeah, for whatever, you know, things that they need. I mean, the city supplements part of their annual budget, which we've cut back now over the last 2 years. So obviously, you know, whatever revenues they can pick up to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
up for that is helpful to them.
Follow Corporation Council, do you see a problem with something like that?
Creating exemption.
Yeah.
City parks are city property, except for Kennedy Park, which, you know, is property. Sorry.
Say it's my backyard, I don't care.
That's different, the rules change.
Cut that.
I saw you selling hot dogs one Memorial Day, over the fence, I saw you.
Was that Paul Estefan at the barbecue? No, parks, I mean, the law is pretty clear that you can impose restrictions on the use of parks so long as they're, you know, either related to safety, which would be the case with building, health and all that, or reasonable regulations of other kinds where you want to control the, you know, the park operations. You can do things like that. There has to be a rational relationship to the larger purpose. If you want to exempt somebody, it's got to be not because you like somebody but because it makes sense for the overall business plan. That would be permissible.
Okay.
Well, there would be two real exemptions, would be Danbury baseball.
The Danbury
I mean, they
baseball
paid for
and
everything.
Westerners.
And the Westerners,
Which is
who
fine.
need it because it goes right back into the Westerners organization.
Just remember, the whole idea of these fixed stands is, again, as my client indicated to me, the mayor indicated to me, was that it'd be a revenue producer. The idea is to try to generate revenue. Whether you generate enough revenue from wheeled vehicles at fixed locations versus a fixed unit, a block building, whatever, I don't know. Who knows how much money you could make of it. The concept was you can get more money from a long-term contract, 20-year, 40-year contract, whatever it is, with a private entity who would provide a multifaceted service. That was the idea, to generate revenue more than you could probably get from an ice cream person, even if you had a fixed location. How much can they pay? So that was the concept behind the fixed,
Right.
non-wheeled
Right.
location.
And then, just looking at the list, the permit is $200 a year. Right? That's all it is. Now, I mean, there are literally thousands of people that go through the park over the course of
I know.
the spring, summer, and fall. I mean, I don't think anyone has any idea how much revenue comes into all of these vehicles that go in there. Obviously, somebody's making something where there wouldn't be so many of them running around. I think the enticement of limiting the number of vendors within the park would say, all right, you know, we have, we'll say 4. 4 vendors that are exclusive to that, and everyone else is out. So that would have to increase their revenue, and such that we should be able to command or, you know, put this out to bid and be able to generate some funds above and beyond what we see today from those 4 locations.
Remember, the other issue with these transient, if you will, wheeled guys is that the permit fees, the health fees are lower than they are for a fixed stand. And also, I don't know what the inspection routine for these wheeled vehicles are as opposed to a fixed one. That's something that Scott Leroy has to address. There are different fees for these things, so you get a lower fee, and you may have some more difficulty of inspection. I'm not sure about how that,
Well, I think that if we were going, I understand what you're saying. One of the other issues that I'm thinking is that we're setting a precedence here. First we start with Rogers Park, and next we go to Kenosha Lake, and then we go to, what about, we have the schools too, right? That we have to contend with.
There are,
We have the
Too many
motorized
sites
vehicles
where-
over at,
where-
and at
yeah.
schools, and, I know we're here for Rogers Park, so let's just stay focused on that. But I just know that, that it can go that direction.
I think one of the issues with Rogers Park is the fact that there's been altercations and there's been police issues and problems there, and I think that's what they're trying to resolve. Now, that's not to say that might not move to another park, but I think Rogers Park right now is the impetus for us looking at this to try to get some correction and regulation on this, so.
nowhere in Danbury, other than Rogers Park, do you have the volume of people and activities that go
Right.
on for such
Well, let me ask you a question though.
You can't compare, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, there's no site in Danbury that even comes close. I mean, there may be an event here or there, or something going on someplace, over a weekend maybe, but it's not the consistent flow of, softball, baseball, volleyball, tennis, the playground, the spray park. I mean, it's just probably one of the busiest places, traffic-wise in the city.
I set up a concession stand in my backyard once in a while. Probably
I
can't
saw
get through the
that.
fence.
Like everyone else, they just kind of.
Yeah, got it.
I remember too, as chairman, as you deal with this, there's another submission to you. It's an amendment to the existing vendors ordinance, which again deals with the revenue issue, because as Nick said, each peddler applies for a permit and pays a $200 fee. Presently, the ordinance only has that one fee, regardless of how many agents you have assisting you in the vending. And the statute prevents us from raising that fee because the state law limits it. But what we did to try to deal with that is that each agent would also pay that fee. So if, brother-in-law comes in and sells hot dogs on Saturday, on Friday, they have to pay $200. Each one has to pay $200. That's not related to the Rogers Park
That's already,
necessarily. That's an amendment to the existing peddler's
Right.
ordinance, which is also in the package for you. So just so you know that we try to deal with the revenue generation in two ways. One is to enlarge the vendor fee that we have now, the itinerant guys, anywhere in the city. And the second is the Rogers Park zone. So just so you know, there's two facets of this issue between.
which is, okay, so then we want to raise the fee for, like, say, Glenwood Lake Park. They have somebody running the concession stand, and when she wasn't there, she had her son there. She'd have to
No,
pay.
that's not an itinerant vendor. The 11-4 that's in the package there is just for itinerant vendors. That's for the hot dog guy. So Mike goes out with his hot dog truck, and then the next day has his son coming in to help him. If the son is helping him, he has to pay another separate permit fee. That's what
Really?
that deals with, yeah.
That's hard to enforce though, is it? Is it hard to?
Well, you have to, yeah, it's hard to enforce. You have to have somebody who observes an agent one day and the person who took out the original permit the first day.
Because right now, the agent, you can have as many agents as
Correct,
you want.
correct. And that would be the amendment that,
Right.
yeah.
But I mean, the other thing is that with the, or I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
whatever.
Through the chair.
But you would have your vendor's fees regardless. You'd have that, and then I think what would make the most sense down here is then you have designated locations with a separate lease agreement. But you'd still have to have your vendor's fee. That, I don't think that would change, right?
No.
That'd be
No,
throughout.
again, let's take Rogers Park, for example. If you did what the documents proposes, you have fixed locations which would pay, you bid them out, you pay some annual fee or something by those vendors, fixed vendors. You'd have no more motorized guys.
Right,
The
well,
guys with the good humor who'd be
yeah.
pedaling under the bicycle would still pay you that vendor's fee
Right.
under the existing $200. If they had an agent, they'd pay another $200. So the two would be work mutually inclusive. You'd have both the fixed guys and these $200 itinerant vendors. But the $200 change adding on $200 each agent applies citywide. It's not just Rogers Park. It would apply to Rogers Park also, if you had itinerary guides in there. And that's because, remember again, if you adopted this as it is, non-motorized concessionaires could operate in Rogers Park, as they are today. No problem. You just have to pay the $200 and you're in there. You could do that.
Right.
Subject to his, control over where they might go. But you couldn't keep them off the streets.
But if we have a Rogers Park zone,
But we had the Rogers
they'd have to
Park
stay,
zone, I guess that's
they would
what-
have to stay out.
If you, no,
No,
if you have Rogers,
non-motorized, but if you just have a little push cart on wheels,
You could
you know,
go
like,
around.
there's a little.
So you're not gonna have arguments and fights with the guys that are paying, where it's bid out? I mean, we're still gonna have issues.
Maybe with the ice cream guy. Because I don't know how much peddling you're gonna do out of a little push cart
They have
to
the
do hot
steam-
dogs
the
and hamburgers
steam,
and
I don't know.
fries and stuff.
again, remember the idea with the fixed places is substantial, and that's why the revenue would be larger. A push cart would be, a good humor guy, right? Just
I
ice-
think we
Yeah.
need to get,
Whether they're the arguments, it's the way it is, everybody will know that.
yeah.
I just don't think that there's from a business standpoint, I just don't think there's enough money involved there that they're gonna go through this hassle. I mean, I've never seen one down there yet as far as a push cart.
Yeah, there was one the other day.
Was there?
Matter of fact, she came down Mountainville Avenue to the end where you go to the school and went in that way.
Right.
Ice
Push
cream.
cart.
Yeah, they have the steam,
Because
the
I
steam,
ran into somebody down there last year.
Good humor, something like that.
they even have steam carts with the steam top.
But they have a vendor's permit.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You still have, no matter, to vend anything, you have to have that permit.
Well,
I mean, did you know that she had, I'm asking you, did you know that she had one, you saw it?
I saw the permit
Right.
on the cart.
And I guess an idea to have all the agents make sure that they're paid, we're gonna have to have a picture ID that they wear around their neck or something, is they're gonna have to, but then obviously you're gonna have to have somebody that polices it too. So who is that? Is that the health department or is that,
That's the police department.
police department?
Now, remember that what happens sometimes is you have a person who takes out a vendor's permit and they start expanding their operation, right? You have 2 carts that at once, now you have an agent and he's working for free. He didn't pay the city anything. So this addresses.
Right, but you said that you want to change that, so the agents, each agent has to
Each agent,
pay.
right.
Right, and that's where you'd have to have some kind, because they don't have a formal ID that they have on them, they just have that placard that goes on the wall, or, it's...
Right now, the agent would go to the PD and they would be charged and the PD would approve them as an
Right.
agent of the main vendor. But now you have to pay the PD.
so I'm sorry, but can you explain that to me again? So when you have, so say we're down in Rogers Park and we have somebody that owns a hot dog or has one of these specific spots for a hot dog. If he has another guy working with him, he too will have to
Yes.
pay?
Yes, if he's an agent.
So if you have
or an assistant.
an employee helping you, each person will have to, so if you have 4 people working the hot dog
Right.
stand.
That's the concept behind, if you will, you're limited to the amount you can charge for an annual fee by law. The only reasonable way around it is to charge another reasonable fee for the additional administrative cost of other people vending next door for the same main vendor. So yeah, if another person applies to help guy number 1, he'd have to come in and pay a second fee for that, and you'd have to monitor that somehow.
I think if you look at that list, there's 1 or 2 people that hold more than 1 permit.
Where would you say that?
Esposito or
I'm
Elizabeth.
seeing, I'm looking at the list for 2010.
Right.
We have 1,
But
2,
the
3,
4 or
4,
5 down, there's
5,
the same
6,
name
7.
3 times.
We only have 7 for 2010. Right.
There's Esposito there once, 2, 3, 4 times right there.
Those are 4 different permits, so I'm assuming that they pay.
How long does the permit last for, a year?
Year until
Oh,
October.
okay.
It's renewable on October 1st.
Oh, okay. So we have 20 right now.
Down from last year, I noticed as well.
Through the chair.
Yes.
The one thing I see with what we just talked about there, with the additional agents having to pay that 200, I mean, being in business, help is tough, and actually, when I was down there the other day, the one that I went to, the the woman had her young daughter there. You know, her daughter might have been 14 or 15. But, you know, it's a family business, and and, you know, it's hard to get somebody that's gonna be there all the time. So if you have a part-time staff amongst 3 or 4 or 5 people or whatever to help out, you know, you're not gonna expect these people to pay $1,000 in permit fees to have all these different agents.
And then pay them hourly too.
And then pay them hourly on top of it. You know, and maybe, well, I don't know. I mean, I remember when we got a veteran's permit. My father was a veteran, so he was exempt, but I was an agent for him. And so I can appreciate, you know, where that aspect is of being an agent, because if I wasn't able to be an agent, then I would have had you know, the additional fee on top of it. Or, you know, if we have that, and like how I do it is because we sell flowers on the street, and it's a one-shot deal. If I gotta pay, you know, sometimes I have, you know, different people helping me out, working for me or whatever. And then it kind of, you know, eliminates the effectiveness of actually doing it.
Well, these are all considerations that came up, and in fact,
Yeah.
I think you guys are dealing now, or maybe you've adopted, I don't remember, new health department inspection fees, which would rise substantially, and certainly you have a risk by raising any fees of discouraging the very business that you're trying to get fees from. So for example, if Scott Roy charges $200 now for an annual inspection of a hot dog cart, I think those fees are scheduled to go up substantially. So with this and with that, you do have, but that's your call. You know, if you guys feel that for whatever reason you don't want to charge this fee, it's not a problem. These are the kind of judgment calls that are made, but the idea is to generate the revenue, okay? That's how all this comes up.
Right. And I mean,
You know.
is the right thing to do though, is to do a
Yeah.
kind of survey to see
Right.
what kind of money we could generate. Is it reasonable to ask these people to pay this? Are we gonna deter them? Do we wanna deter them?
Right.
Because, you know, if we deter them, I don't know, that's free enterprise, I guess that's what we're about in this country. And, you know, if we make it so unattractive, then we defeated the whole purpose, you know?
I mean, if we think that we're gonna get $500 a month for a fixed spot, you know, throughout the season, I mean, that may be a little too.
Right, where do you,
I mean,
Where do you find
If you go back to the Rogers Park issue, that
Right.
it's not just the revenue. The idea of that is controlling a kind of helter-skelter situation.
and I agree with that, there has to be some kind of control
Yeah.
that goes on down there, because I can see the chaos. You know, I look down and I see, you know, horns blowing and cars, and especially down, what is that? Lions Way. And I mean, right, and it's narrow to begin with, and people pulling in and out, and
People park on both sides.
Right, and it
somebody stops
definitely-
in the middle.
it definitely is a concern. And certainly, I can see, you know, what Antonio had said about the safety concern, and, you know, it's just tough there. Kids going in between cars, and it, you know, split second. and
That's our
it's-
biggest
Lives are
concern.
changed. But, so, I mean, if that's, obviously this is a bigger issue, because we're looking at trying to generate some revenue throughout maybe this program, but the original issue is the Rogers Park.
I think that this is something that can't be done in just this one meeting alone. I think that we've all come up with lots of different ideas and suggestions, and I don't really think that we can just make a conclusion this evening, because there's a lot of issues that, you know, came up, and what do you think?
But do we agree that something has to be done?
Yeah, that's
Something
why
has
we're
to be
here,
done.
that's why
I
we're
think
here,
everyone-
and
I think everyone's in
we're
agreement
not
that
saying we're not gonna
what-
take
what
any
is-
action, I'm just
what
saying that
is
we.
occurring now is.
Yeah, I think we got a
this
lot out on the
change.
table, and Antonio, Mr. Iadarola, when he talked about, I'd like to get some ideas of how much it would cost to build a concession stand, you know, and to find out if, you know, what kind of people would be interested in maybe building it themselves. Mr. Cava?
Mrs. Stanley, this is a matter of process. Even if you were to come out of here tonight with a decision on something, it would have to go to the council meeting in July. It would have to get referred to a public hearing in July or August. And then it would have to go on the August or the September agenda, which is going to put it out of this year's
Yeah, it doesn't.
time frame anyway.
Right,
So-
there is no hurry. As far as I'm concerned, we have no hurry.
I totally agree. I think this is something that has to be
Yeah, I
just
mean,
talked about a little bit
I'd like
more.
to get it done before the start of next season.
Absolutely.
We have no hurry this year, but.
So I don't wanna make any drastic,
Yeah, that's why I'm saying
you know,
that.
decisions
It's just a
right
matter
now.
of process. To rush it now, there's no sense to rush it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairperson, I actually think you guys made some great headway tonight with some of the discussions you've had. I think one is you recognize some of the issues. Two is, in my opinion, the recommendation of having a dedicated area that gets bid out. There's so much better control for Nick and I, because now we know who is basically there. If we're getting some reports that this person is creating a hazard, then we could address it. Right now, it's basically a fly in, fly out. By the time we even address an issue with somebody driving on our grass, trying to get to a bunch of kids that were on a field, which is one of the calls that we got. By the time we got down there, the vendor's gone, but now it'll be different, because there'll be a specific location for each vendor.
And
So I think as an ad hoc committee meeting, I think you made great strides.
And I
tonight.
like Joe's suggestion about the ice cream in it, but being said, having 3 or 4 concession stands or spot designated
Locations,
areas,
fixed
I think we
locations.
can only have one ice cream man, because they drive around, they're gonna be told where they can pull in to each area. But you can't have more than one, because they'll be racing to the next spot, or wherever they see the next group of kids going, I think, I don't know, but I do think we need to have one. It can't have a park without an ice cream man, sorry.
Through the chair to Mr. Pinter. Now, if we did that special, designation spots and lease them, legally, do we have to post signs at all the entrances to Rogers Park to let, the world know that this is what's going on here, so other vendors, because how are other vendors, especially that first year that this is,
And they fill out the form.
if we adopt something like this, how do you let people know?
Very good question. You want to post it, but that first year or 2 or even 3, you have the police patrol going in there and just, and maybe Nick, or whoever he has, if he has people, just telling them, look, things have changed and you can't, just drive through it.
I think it
It's on the
starts at the
application.
permit process,
Yeah, the application, right here.
process.
No, what he's saying is that.
But they
people
don't have to
just
say
drive
where
through.
they're going.
Yeah, they just drive through.
They don't have to say where they're
But
going.
you can put it right on here,
Yeah,
that
but-
there's a Rogers Park
they're
zone,
not-
you're not allowed here. You can go wherever you want, but you
Because
can't
you'll
go
still
here.
have to have a vendor's license.
I think if we have to create the
No, right,
Rogers
but for all
Park,
those other people that are used to going down there, but they didn't get the bid, or they don't, or somebody just came, wasn't here for 2 years, now they're gonna come back, and all of a sudden they're pulling up to that spot and, or pulling up where they used to go, and now all of a sudden, they have to know, they have to be informed, I guess is what
Mr.
probably
Pavo?
legally.
Just 2 quick things. One to Mr. Hallis's question. Mike, I think that, and Les could correct me if I'm wrong, but when the vendor applications go out for the next year, there's a notice included in there to every vendor who applies for a permit that there will be no Rogers Park zone and you have to be permitted to be in there.
Right.
So every vendor who applies for a vendor's permit in the city will get that letter or notice, and they can do that for the first couple of years just till they get everybody on board with that. And the other thing I was going to suggest, Madam Chairman, is that maybe the next time we meet, maybe Nick and Antonio could come up with a suggested designated area with not a really great map. It doesn't have to be a great map, just something with a map of Rogers Park that would show the zone and then would show the designated areas.
How large,
And
how small.
how large of an area and, what you would be looking at. So at least you can view that the next time we get together and at least talk about that and moving forward with that.
but one more question to Mr. Pinter. You said once they get a vendor's license, that they can go anywhere they want. But if we create the Rogers Park zone, we don't have to let them. I'm just reiterating really what you just said, right?
You don't have to let anybody into a park.
Public park.
You can give as many peddlers permits as you want. You don't have to let them into the park. What you have to do is let them operate somewhere in Danbury. Okay, they can get a spot from somebody, from a private person. They can go on the sidewalk. They can go somewhere else. But he, for example, Nick can say, "Oh, you got a peddler's permit. That's nice, but I can't have you in the park because I have some other regulations."
I get all spring we want to go down the park. And I've been told that there's no more room for additional vendors down there. Now, I don't know if that discourages them from going forward with the permit or not. And when they ask for suggestions, I say your best bet is to find a private, a business entity that has a large enough parking lot that would be willing to have you, park there during the day, during the weekends, whenever it happens to be, to vend your products.
And to elaborate on that, when I spoke with Sean Harity, he said it has to be in a food zone.
Yeah.
So it can't
Of course,
just be
I'm not sure
anywhere, it can't
exact
be in my
definition of
neighborhood,
that, but-
has to be in a food
Right.
zone. But I asked him about CVS parking lot, that is in a food zone, which is right outside of
Is
Rogers
not-
Park.
is
It
this-
is in a
it
food
is,
zone.
okay.
Midas Mufflers is in a food zone.
Yeah, why didn't we
So,
buy CVS?
I'm just saying, if somebody wanted to, an ice cream man wanted to park there, the CVS isn't Rogers Park though, it's its own property.
Should have done.
It should have been his right. Absolutely.
Just that one.
Well, I would like to possibly
Right.
entertain a motion.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe two.
I'll try.
Just
Well, at this time, I'd like to make a motion just to continue this meeting for more input from the city departments, such as the Health Department, Public Works, and Parks and Recreation. And we would meet in the future.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.